Obinna, you think I don't see what you do? You think those cameras hide your secrets? The scream echoed through the marble hallways of the Ikoyi mansion, but it existed only in Obinna's nightmares. In reality, the night was silent. Too silent. He sat alone in his private study at 2:47 a.m., eyes fixed on 6 glowing monitors mounted on the mahogany-paneled wall. Each screen displayed a different room of his sprawling estate. Bedroom, kitchen, living room, garden entrance, guest wing, main gate. His wife, Yetunde, moved across the bedroom screen like a ghost in silk pajamas. She wasn't doing anything suspicious. She never did. She simply walked to the window, stood there for a moment looking out at the Lagos skyline, then returned to bed. Normal, innocent, predictable. Yet Obinna rewound the footage and watched again. Welcome to Voice of Aunty Dora, where we bring you the most gripping, emotional stories straight from the heart of Africa. Thank you so much for your incredible support. Your likes, comments, and shares keep these stories alive. Before we dive deep into today's shocking tale, do me a favor. Drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from. Are you in Atlanta, London, Kingston, Lagos? I want to know. Now, let's get into this story that will shake you to your core. Obinna Nnamdi was not just wealthy. He was the kind of rich that made other billionaires feel middle class. At 48, he owned 3 hotels, a logistics company that moved goods across West Africa, and enough political connections to make governors return his calls within minutes. His Ikoyi mansion sat on 2 acres of manicured lawns, fountains, and enough security to protect a head of state. But none of that compared to his most prized possession: control. Control over his business empire. Control over his public image. And most importantly, control over his home. The cameras had been his idea 5 years ago, installed discreetly during a security upgrade. Yetunde never questioned it. Why would she? Lagos was dangerous. Kidnappings happened. Armed robberies were real. A man of his status needed protection. That's what he told her. That's what she believed. What she didn't know was that the cameras weren't just at the gates and perimeter walls. They were inside. In every room except the bathrooms. Even he had some boundaries. Tiny, expensive, invisible lenses embedded in smoke detectors, wall clocks, decorative vases. A network so sophisticated that he could watch his home from anywhere in the world. And he did. Obsessively. Obinna took a sip of cognac, his 3rd glass of the night, and switched to the kitchen camera. Empty. The marble countertops gleamed under recessed lighting. Everything in its place. He switched to the living room. The cream sofas sat undisturbed, the abstract art on the walls casting shadows in the dim security lights. He switched to the guest wing where his younger brother Ifeanyi stayed when he visited from Port Harcourt. Dark, quiet. He leaned back in his leather chair, a smile tugging at his lips. This was his kingdom. These walls, these rooms, these people. He knew everything that happened here. Every conversation, every movement, every secret. Or so he thought. His phone buzzed. A message lit up the screen. He glanced at it and his smile widened. "Still awake, my king? I miss you. When are you coming to me?" It was from Ngozi, his mistress. His escape. His validation that he was still the man he'd always been. Powerful, desirable, in control. Ngozi was 32, 16 years younger than Yetunde. She was everything his wife was not. Bold, adventurous, unrestrained. She lived in a luxury apartment in Lekki Phase 1, a place he'd bought for her 2 years ago. She never asked about his wife. She never demanded marriage. She simply existed in a separate world, one where Obinna could breathe without the weight of expectations. He typed back quickly, "Tomorrow night, wait for me." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. then a single emoji, a red heart. Obinna set the phone down and returned his attention to the monitors. Yetunde was in bed now, the covers pulled up to her shoulders. She lay on her side, facing away from the camera. He watched her for a long moment, waiting for something. He didn't know what. Movement? A phone call? A secret? But there was nothing. There was never anything. And somehow, that made him watch even more. He had married Yetunde 23 years ago when he was still building his empire, when his first hotel was just a dream and a bank loan. She had been a teacher then, patient and kind, the daughter of a retired civil servant from Ibadan. She wasn't glamorous. She wasn't flashy. But she was steady, loyal. She believed in him when others doubted. She stood by him through the lean years, the failures, the humiliations of dealing with corrupt officials and delayed payments. Back then, he had loved her. He was certain of it. But as the money came, as the power grew, something shifted. He began to notice how other men looked at him with envy, how women flocked to him at parties, how his name commanded respect in boardrooms and at society weddings. He realized he could have anything, anyone. And once you know you can have everything, the thing you already have starts to feel ordinary. Yetunde aged gracefully, but she aged. She preferred staying home to attending his business galas. She read books instead of following him to club openings. She spoke softly when he wanted her to dazzle. She became the woman he came home to, not the woman he wanted to be seen with. That's when Ngozi entered his life, at a product launch in Victoria Island. She had walked up to him with confidence that bordered on audacity, complimented his speech, and handed him her business card. She worked in PR, she said. She could help him build his brand. He had called her, not for business. The affair began 6 months later. It was supposed to be temporary. A thrill. A reminder that he was still a man in his prime. But Ngozi knew how to make him feel like a king. She listened when he talked. She laughed at his jokes. She made him feel powerful in ways that had nothing to do with money. And she never questioned him, never asked where he was going, never demanded explanations, unlike Yetunde. Obinna's jaw tightened as he remembered their last conversation at dinner 3 nights ago. She had asked him, in that calm, unbothered tone of hers, why he was always on his phone, why he came home so late, why he seemed distant. He had snapped at her, told her she was imagining things, told her to stop being paranoid. She had simply nodded and said nothing more. That silence had unnerved him. It still did. He switched camera views again, cycling through the feeds like a man searching for ghosts. Garden, gate, driveway. Everything was exactly as it should be. Then he paused. The camera in the guest wing. The one in Ifeanyi's room. The light was on. Obinna frowned. His brother wasn't supposed to be in town. He had left for Port Harcourt 2 weeks ago. Obinna rewound the footage, scanning backward through the hours. At 11:34 p.m., the door had opened. A figure entered. But it wasn't Ifeanyi. It was Yetunde. Obinna leaned forward, his pulse quickening. What was she doing in that room? She walked to the desk, opened a drawer, and pulled out something small. A phone? No, a folded piece of paper. She read it, her face unreadable in the grainy footage, then placed it back and left the room. The entire interaction lasted less than 2 minutes. Obinna's mind raced. What was that paper? Why was she in Ifeanyi's room? Was she hiding something? Meeting someone? He replayed it again and again. His phone buzzed. Another message from Ngozi. Good night, my love. Dream of me. He ignored it. For the first time in 5 years of watching, Obinna felt something unfamiliar creep into his chest. Uncertainty. He had always believed the cameras gave him power. knowledge, control. But now, staring at that silent footage of his wife's back as she lay in bed, he realized something chilling. He didn't know her at all. What would you do if your husband watched your every move but never truly saw you? Drop a like if you've ever felt invisible in your own home, and don't forget to comment below where you're watching from. Now, let's see what happens next. The camera in the living room flickered. For just a second, the screen went black. When it came back on, Yetunde was standing in the center of the room, staring directly at the camera. As if she knew. As if she'd always known. Obinna didn't sleep that night. He sat in his study until dawn broke over Lagos, replaying that moment over and over. Yetunde standing in the living room at 3:11 a.m. Her face turned toward the camera. Her eyes seeming to pierce through the lens, through the walls, through his very soul. Had she been looking at the camera? Or just staring into space, lost in thought? He told himself it was coincidence. The camera was hidden inside the decorative wall clock above the entertainment center. There was no way she could know, no logical way. But logic didn't stop the cold sweat that had broken across his skin when he saw her standing there. By 6 o'clock a.m., exhaustion forced him to close the laptop. He walked through the silent mansion to the master bedroom. Yetunde was already awake, sitting at her vanity, braiding her hair. She wore a simple wrapper, her face bare of makeup. At 45, she still carried the quiet beauty that had first drawn him to her, though he rarely noticed it anymore. "You're up early?" she said without turning around. Her voice was neutral, pleasant, the same tone she'd used for years. "Couldn't sleep. Work on my mind," he replied, loosening his tie. "You should rest. You'll make yourself sick." "I'm fine." She nodded, her fingers moving deftly through her hair. "Breakfast will be ready soon. Cook is making yam and egg sauce, your favorite." "I'm not hungry. You should eat something, Obinna." He wanted to ask her, wanted to demand to know why she was in Ifeanyi's room, why she was awake at 3 a.m., why she had looked at that camera. But the words stuck in his throat. Because asking would mean admitting he'd been watching, and admitting that would unravel everything. So instead, he said nothing. He showered, dressed, and left for the office without breakfast. This became his pattern. Watch, wonder, say nothing. But to understand how Obinna Nnamdi became a man who trusted cameras more than his own wife, you have to go back. Back to when love was simple. Back to before the money changed everything. 23 years ago, Obinna was nobody. A hustler with a diploma in business administration and a dream that was too big for his bank account. He had just secured a small loan to buy a dilapidated guest house in Yaba, a property everyone said was a waste of money. He was working 3 jobs, managing a petrol station during the day, teaching evening classes at a polytechnic, and driving a taxi on weekends. He met Yetunde at a church program in Ibadan. She was visiting her parents during the long holiday break. She taught English at a secondary school and spent her free time volunteering at a children's library. She wasn't like the Lagos girls who demanded expensive dates and designer bags. She was content with chin-chin and Fanta at a roadside spot. She listened when he talked about his plans. She believed in him. "You'll do great things," she had told him once, her hand in his as they sat under a mango tree. "I can see it. You have the hunger, and hunger builds empires." He had kissed her that day, proposed 3 months later with a ring he could barely afford. They married in a small ceremony. Her family thought she was foolish for choosing a struggling entrepreneur over the bank manager who had been courting her. But Yetunde didn't care about comfort. She cared about potential, about partnership. For 5 years they struggled together. She continued teaching while he poured everything into renovating that guest house. She packed his lunch, ironed his shirts, prayed over his business proposals. When he came home frustrated and defeated, she was the one who reminded him why he started. And slowly, painfully, the business grew. The guest house became profitable. Then he bought another, then a third. He secured contracts with oil companies who needed accommodation for their staff. His name began to circulate in business circles. Money started flowing. Not a trickle, a flood. By their 10th anniversary, Obinna owned 5 properties. By their 15th, he had 12. By their 20th, he was a name you mentioned with respect in Lagos business communities. But somewhere between the 5th property and the 20th, something changed. The same hunger that built his empire began to consume his marriage. He started attending exclusive parties where Yetunde felt out of place. She didn't speak the language of the elite, the gossip, the name-dropping, the performative wealth. She preferred staying home with a book rather than smiling for cameras at society weddings. "You need to make an effort," he had told her once, frustration sharp in his voice. "These people are important. You're my wife. You represent me." "I thought I married you, not your image," she had replied quietly. That conversation marked the beginning of the distance. He began to see her as she was, simple, unpolished, content with ordinary things. And in the world he now inhabited, ordinary was invisible. Then came Ngozi. He met her 2 years ago at the grand opening of his flagship hotel in Victoria Island. She was hired as part of the PR team, a vision in a fitted red dress that commanded attention. While other women whispered behind their hands, Ngozi walked straight up to him during the cocktail hour. "Mr. Nnamdi," she had said, extending a manicured hand. That was an inspiring speech. "You should consider running for office. Men with vision belong in leadership." He had laughed. "Politics is a dirty game." "So is business," she countered with a smile. "But you've mastered that, haven't you?" Her confidence was intoxicating. Her boldness was refreshing. She made him feel like a man who still had mountains to climb, not one who had already settled into the comfort of a rival. They exchanged numbers, professional at first, then less so. Within 3 months, she became a fixture in his life. Not publicly. Obinna was too careful for that. But privately. In hotel suites during business trips. In the Lekki apartment he rented under a shell company. In stolen afternoons when Yetunde thought he was in meetings. Ngozi never asked for marriage. She never demanded he leave his wife. She simply existed as his escape. His reminder that he was still desirable, still powerful, still a man other women wanted. "You deserve to be happy," she would whisper after their encounters. "You've worked so hard. You deserve everything." And he believed her, because she told him what he wanted to hear. Yetunde, meanwhile, grew quieter. She stopped asking where he was going, stopped questioning the late nights and the weekends away. She simply existed in the house he built, managing the domestic staff, attending church alone, living a life parallel to his, but no longer intersecting. He told himself she was content, that she had everything a woman could want, a mansion, financial security, status. What more could she ask for? But if he was honest, truly honest, he knew the answer. She could ask to be seen, to be known, to be loved the way she loved him when he had nothing. He just didn't know how to give her that anymore. So instead, he installed cameras. Because if he couldn't connect with her, at least he could control her. If he couldn't trust her, at least he could watch her. If he couldn't love her the way she deserved, at least he could make sure she never betrayed him. The cameras became his substitute for intimacy, his way of holding on to power when everything else felt uncertain. But now, sitting in his office at midday, staring at his laptop screen showing the live feed of his empty mansion, Obinna felt something unfamiliar. Doubt. Because for all the hours he'd spent watching Yetunde, he realized he didn't actually know her. He knew her routines, her schedule, where she went and who she spoke to, but he didn't know what she thought, what she felt, what she wanted. He didn't know if she was happy or heartbroken, faithful or planning her own escape. He had confused surveillance with understanding. His phone rang. "Ngozi." Baby, I haven't heard from you all morning. Are we still on for tonight? Her voice was sweet, expectant. Once it would have thrilled him. Now it felt like an obligation. I'll let you know, he said curtly. Is everything okay? I'm busy, Ngozi. A pause. You've been distant lately. Did I do something wrong? I said I'm busy. He hung up before she could respond. On his laptop screen, the camera showed Yetunde entering the living room. She sat on the sofa, a cup of tea in her hands, and stared out the window at the sprawling compound. She looked small, alone, tired. For a moment, just a brief, fleeting moment, Obinna felt something twist in his chest. Regret, guilt, he couldn't name it. His phone buzzed again. A message from Ngozi. If you're tired of me, just say so. I'm not a fool. He typed back, not now. Then he returned to watching his wife. The woman he married. The woman he no longer knew. What would you do if the person you thought you controlled turned out to be a stranger? Comment below and let me know. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. The camera in the living room flickered again, just like last night. And when the image stabilized, Yetunde was gone. The teacup sat on the table, but the sofa was empty. He checked the hallway camera. Nothing. Bedroom camera. Empty. Kitchen. Empty. His pulse quickened. Where did she go? He cycled through every feed. Every angle. But Yetunde had vanished. For the first time since installing the cameras, Obinna realized something terrifying. The cameras didn't give him control. They gave him the illusion of it. And illusions always shatter. Obinna's hands trembled as he frantically clicked through camera feeds. Kitchen, empty. Garden, empty. Gate. The security guard sat in his booth, half asleep. Driveway. Her car was still there. She hadn't left the compound. So where was she? He grabbed his phone and dialed her number. It rang, once, twice, 3 times. Then her voice, calm and unhurried. Hello? Where are you? The words came out sharper than he intended. A pause. I'm home. Where else would I be? I mean, which room? I wanted to make sure you're okay. Another pause. Longer this time. When she spoke, there was something in her voice he couldn't quite identify. Amusement? Pity? I'm in the prayer room, Obinna. The one space in this house where you didn't put your eyes. The line went dead. His blood ran cold. The one space where you didn't put your eyes. She knew. She'd always known. His phone slipped from his hand onto the desk. For 5 years, he thought he'd been watching her without detection. 5 years of believing he was the master of his own home, the architect of perfect control. But Yetunde had known all along. And she'd said nothing, done nothing, just lived. Under his gaze, fully aware. The prayer room. Of course. It was the only room he'd left untouched when installing the surveillance system. Not out of respect for God, though he'd told himself that, but because she spent so little time there, he didn't think it mattered. An oversight. His only blind spot. And she'd found it. Obinna's chest tightened. He couldn't breathe properly. The walls of his luxurious office seemed to close in. He loosened his collar, gulped water from the bottle on his desk, but the panic wouldn't subside. If she knew about the cameras, what else did she know? About Ngozi? About the apartment in Lekki? About the lies he'd stacked like building blocks to construct his double life? He had to know. He opened his laptop and began doing what he'd done 1,000 times before. But this time with different eyes. He wasn't watching to control. He was watching to understand. to find the truth he'd been too blind to see. He started with last week's footage. Yetunde's daily routine was predictable. She woke at 5:30 a.m., prayed, supervised breakfast preparations, managed the house staff, read in the afternoons, attended evening service on Wednesdays. Simple, quiet, unremarkable. But now, watching with suspicion instead of satisfaction, Obinna noticed things he'd missed. The way she paused sometimes in the middle of a room, standing perfectly still as if listening to something only she could hear. The way she would glance toward a camera, then quickly look away. Not with fear, but with something that looked like resignation. The way she smiled at the housekeeper, a genuine warmth she never showed him anymore. He went back further. 2 months. 6 months. A year. Hours disappeared as he sat transfixed, watching his wife's life unfold in reverse. And slowly, painfully, a pattern emerged that made his stomach turn. She was lonely. Not just alone. Lonely. Deeply. Profoundly lonely. There were moments that gutted him, like the footage from 4 months ago when she'd prepared his favorite meal, jollof rice with fried plantains and goat meat, and waited at the dining table for 3 hours. He'd called that night and said he was working late. The cameras showed her sitting there, the food growing cold, her face blank. At 10:47 p.m., she'd finally stood, covered the plates, and went to bed without eating. He'd been with Ngozi that night, at a hotel bar in Victoria Island, laughing, drinking champagne, feeling alive. Or the footage from 6 months ago. Their wedding anniversary. He'd forgotten. Completely forgotten. But Yetunde had worn her best Ankara dress, the green and gold pattern he'd once said made her look like royalty. She'd arranged flowers in the living room, lit candles. The cameras caught her checking her phone every few minutes, waiting for him to remember, to call, to come home. He'd sent a text at 11 p.m. Long day, don't wait up. The footage showed her blowing out the candles one by one. Her face revealed nothing, but her shoulders had slumped in a way that spoke of bone-deep exhaustion. Obinna's throat constricted. He wanted to look away but couldn't. He jumped to 3 weeks ago, a phone conversation. Yetunde had been in the garden, phone pressed to her ear, speaking to someone. He increased the volume, straining to hear through the outdoor camera's microphone. I know, Mama. I know. No, he's not a bad man. He's just lost. We both are. No, I'm not leaving. I made a vow. I don't care what people say. This is my marriage, not theirs. Mama, please. I need you to pray. Not judge. I have to go. She'd hung up, wiped her eyes quickly, and walked back into the house with her head high. She'd been defending him. Even when her own mother was telling her to leave, Yetunde had defended him. The realization hit like a physical blow. He clicked to another file. Last month, the living room, late evening. Yetunde sat reading a book, one of those thick novels she loved. The camera captured her face in profile. She looked peaceful, content even, as if she'd made peace with something. Then the front door opened. Obinna, his own image on screen, walked in. Yetunde looked up, smiled. Welcome home. Are you hungry? No, his recorded voice said coldly. I ate already. Oh, okay, there's plantain in the... I said I'm not hungry, Yetunde. He'd walked past her without another word, disappeared up the stairs. The camera showed Yetunde's smile fading slowly. She'd closed her book, set it down carefully, and stared at nothing for a long moment. Then she'd gone back to reading as if the interaction never happened. Watching it now, Obinna wanted to reach through the screen and shake his past self. What had been so important? Where had he eaten? He checked his phone records from that day. Ngozi. He'd had dinner with Ngozi. He slammed the laptop shut. Couldn't watch anymore. But his mind wouldn't let him rest. He opened it again. This time, he searched for footage of himself with Yetunde. Conversations. Interactions. Moments of connection. There were almost none. In months of recordings, he appeared in the house for maybe 30 cumulative hours. He slept there, showered there, changed clothes there. But he didn't live there. Not really. The house was Yetunde's domain. He was just a visitor, a ghost who haunted his own home. Then he found something that made his blood run cold. 2 weeks ago, the guest room, the same footage that had first made him suspicious. He watched it again, this time paying attention to every detail. Yetunde entered at 11:34 p.m., walked to the desk, opened the drawer. But now, with the brightness turned up, he could see what she pulled out. Not a phone, not a secret letter, a photograph. He zoomed in, enhanced the image quality, and his heart stopped. It was a picture of him and Yetunde on their wedding day. Young, smiling, his arm around her waist, her head on his shoulder. They looked ridiculously happy, stupidly in love. That photo used to sit on his desk in the study. He'd moved it years ago when he redecorated, shoved it in a drawer and forgot about it. But Yetunde had found it, kept it, hidden it in the one room where he rarely went. The footage showed her holding the photograph, running her finger over his face. Not hers, his. As if trying to remember the man he used to be. Then she'd folded it carefully, placed it back in the drawer, and left. Obinna's vision blurred. He didn't realize he was crying until a tear hit the keyboard. She wasn't hiding an affair. She wasn't plotting against him. She was hiding memories, protecting pieces of a marriage that no longer existed except in photographs and fading hope. While he'd been watching her for signs of betrayal, she'd been mourning the death of their love in silence. His phone buzzed. A message from Ngozi. "You're being weird. If there's another woman, just tell me. I'm not stupid." The irony was suffocating. Ngozi was worried about being replaced. Meanwhile, Obinna was sitting in his office, destroyed by footage of his own wife's loyalty. He typed nothing back. Instead, he opened a new file. Something he'd never watched before because it seemed irrelevant. The prayer room camera feed. Wait, no. There was no prayer room camera. But there was a hallway camera just outside it. And if he turned up the audio sensitivity, he clicked the file from yesterday morning. 5:47 a.m. The hallway was dark except for a sliver of light under the prayer room door. And then he heard it. Faint, but unmistakable. Yetunde's voice. Praying. "Lord, I don't know how much longer I can carry this. I'm tired. So tired of being invisible. Of living in a house full of eyes, but no one who actually sees me." "I know you see me, Father. I know you haven't forgotten me, even if my husband has." Her voice cracked. "I'm not asking you to change him. I'm asking you to change me. To help me let go. To help me stop hoping for the man he used to be to come back. Because he's gone, Lord, and I need to accept that. I need to grieve what we were so I can survive what we've become." Obinna couldn't listen anymore. He closed the laptop with shaking hands. She wasn't betraying him. She was releasing him. And somehow, that was worse than any affair could have been. What would you do if the trap you set for someone else caught you instead? If the cameras you installed to catch betrayal showed you the truth about your own heart? Drop a comment below. I want to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button because this story is about to take a turn that will leave you speechless. Obinna sat in his office as evening fell over Lagos. The cameras still recorded. The feeds still streamed. His surveillance system hummed quietly in the background, capturing every corner of his mansion. But for the first time in 5 years, he didn't want to watch. Because the cameras had finally shown him the truth. and the truth was unbearable. Obinna didn't go home that night, or the next. He checked into his own hotel, the flagship property in Victoria Island, and holed up in the penthouse suite like a man on the run. From what? He couldn't say. From his wife? From himself? From the camera feeds that now felt like accusatory eyes staring back at him? He told his secretary to cancel his meetings. Told the hotel staff not to disturb him. Turned off his phone after deleting Ngozi's 17 unanswered messages without reading them. For 2 days, he sat in that luxurious room, surrounded by evidence of his success. Marble floors, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Atlantic, imported furniture, and felt like a beggar. The cameras were still running. Even from the hotel, he could access the feeds. His laptop sat on the coffee table, closed. He'd opened it twice, closed it twice. The third time, his hand hovered over the lid for a full minute before he finally gave in. The footage loaded. His mansion appeared across multiple screens. Everything looked normal, peaceful. The guards at the gate, the gardener trimming hedges, the housekeeper sweeping the driveway. And Yetunde. She moved through the house with the same quiet grace she'd always had. Made breakfast, supervised the staff, read her book in the afternoon. No signs of distress, no tears, no anger. She looked fine. Completely, utterly fine. It infuriated him. How could she be fine? Didn't she notice he was gone? Didn't she care? He watched for hours, waiting for something. A phone call to her mother. A conversation with a friend. Some indication that his absence mattered. Nothing. At 3:00 p.m. on the second day, she received a visitor. The gate camera showed a car pulling up, a modest Toyota. A woman stepped out, mid-40s, wearing a simple dress and headscarf. Obinna didn't recognize her. The living room camera showed them sitting together, teacups between them. He cranked up the audio. "I'm telling you, Yetunde, you look different," the woman was saying. "There's something lighter about you, like a weight has been lifted." Yetunde smiled. A real smile. The kind Obinna hadn't seen in years. "Do I?" "Yes, oh. Even your face is glowing. What's your secret? New cream?" Yetunde laughed. Actually laughed. The sound was startling. "No cream, BC. Just clarity. I think I finally understand something I've been avoiding for a long time." "Understand what?" "That I can't control what my husband does. I can't make him love me. I can't compete with whoever or whatever has his attention. All I can control is myself, my peace, my choices." BC leaned forward. "Are you leaving him?" The question hung in the air. Obinna's pulse hammered in his ears. Yetunde sipped her tea slowly. "I don't know yet. I'm praying about it. But I'm not afraid anymore." "BC, that's the difference. I used to be so afraid of being alone, of what people would say, of starting over. But lately," she paused. "Lately I've realized I'm already alone. I've been alone for years. Living in the same house with someone doesn't mean you're together. Yeah. But the man is a billionaire, oh. It's not easy to walk away from that kind of comfort." "Comfort?" Yetunde's voice was soft but firm. "Sister, there's no comfort in being a stranger in your own marriage. I'd rather live in one room and be seen than live in a mansion and be invisible." Obinna slammed the laptop shut. His hands were shaking. Not with anger, with something worse. Fear. She was slipping away. Not dramatically, not with fights or ultimatums. She was simply letting go. Quietly. Peacefully. With the kind of dignified strength that came from a decision already made in the heart. He grabbed his phone, turned it back on. It immediately flooded with notifications. Missed calls from Ngozi, angry texts, then worried texts, then cold texts. The last one from this morning. I get it now. You're done with me. After everything I've done for you. After all the times I've been there when your wife couldn't satisfy you. You know what? Fuck you, Obinna. Don't ever call me again. And don't think I'll stay quiet about this. Everyone will know what kind of man you really are. A threat. She was threatening him. Obinna's jaw tightened. This was exactly why he needed control. People couldn't be trusted. They turned on you, used your secrets as weapons. Ngozi was proving his point perfectly. She'd never loved him. She loved what he could give her, and now that she sensed the tap running dry, she was showing her true colors. He typed back, "You'll do no such thing. Remember who you're dealing with." 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Then, "Try me." He threw the phone across the room. It hit the wall and clattered to the floor, screen cracked but still functioning. Everything was falling apart. His wife was preparing to leave, his mistress was threatening him, and the cameras, his precious cameras that were supposed to give him power, were showing him exactly how powerless he'd become. He picked up the hotel phone and called home. The housekeeper answered. "Good afternoon, sir." "Where is my wife?" "Madam went out, sir." "Out? Where?" "She didn't say, sir, but she took an overnight bag." Obinna's blood turned to ice. "Overnight bag? When did she leave?" "About 1 hour ago, sir." He hung up and immediately opened his laptop. Checked the cameras. The bedroom showed her closet slightly open. The driveway showed her car missing. The gate camera showed her leaving at 2:43 p.m. Where was she going? To her mother's house in Ibadan? To a lawyer? To another man? No. No. Yetunde wasn't like that. She wouldn't. But how did he know? How did he really know anything about her anymore? He grabbed his car keys and headed for the door, then stopped. What was he going to do? Chase her down? Demand she come back? Beg? Obinna Nnamdi didn't beg. But as he stood in that hotel room surrounded by luxury he'd built with his own hands, he realized something devastating. He had everything, and nothing. His phone rang. An unknown number. Against his better judgment, he answered. "Mr. Nnamdi?" A woman's voice, professional, cold. "Who is this?" "My name is Blessing Okoro. I'm a family lawyer. Your wife asked me to contact you." The room tilted. "What?" "She wanted me to inform you that she'll be staying with a friend for a few days. She needs some space to think. She's not asking for anything from you at this time. She just wanted you to know she's safe and that you shouldn't worry." A lawyer? She sent a lawyer to tell me this? She thought it would be cleaner, less emotional. She also wanted me to remind you that she knows, Mr. Nnamdi. Knows what? Everything. The cameras, the surveillance, all of it. She's known for quite some time. She's been documenting her awareness, dates, times, her emotional state, just in case she ever needs to prove, well, you understand. The floor disappeared beneath him. Prove what? What are you implying? I'm not implying anything, sir. I'm simply conveying my client's message. She wants you to understand that she's not helpless. She's not naive. And she's not trapped. She's making informed choices. And one of those choices is to step away and evaluate whether this marriage still serves her. Serves her? I've given her everything. Everything except what she actually wanted, Mr. Nnamdi. Respect, partnership, love. The line went dead. Obinna stood frozen, the phone still pressed to his ear. A lawyer. Yetunde had hired a lawyer. His quiet, submissive wife who never raised her voice, never made demands, never caused problems. She'd hired a lawyer and was documenting evidence against him. The cameras, his own cameras. She'd known all along and had been building a case, quietly, patiently. While he thought he was watching her, she was watching him, taking notes, preparing. He'd been outmaneuvered. The surveillance system that was supposed to protect him had become evidence against him. The control he thought he had was an illusion. Worse than an illusion, it was a liability. He checked the cameras again, frantically cycling through feeds. Looking for what? Proof that she was bluffing? Signs that she still cared? The house looked the same, empty, waiting. But it no longer felt like his kingdom. It felt like a crime scene. His phone buzzed. A message from Ngozi. "I just got a very interesting call from a lawyer asking about our relationship. Did your wife hire an investigator? This is getting messy, Obinna. I want nothing to do with your marriage drama. Lose my number." He read the message 3 times before its meaning sank in. Yetunde wasn't just documenting the cameras. She was building a complete picture. The affair, the lies, everything. And she was doing it without confrontation, without screaming, without the dramatic showdown he could have controlled and dismissed. She was dismantling his world with lawyer precision and quiet determination. Obinna sank onto the couch, his head in his hands. For the first time in 23 years of marriage, he had no idea what his wife was thinking. No cameras could tell him. No surveillance could reveal it. She'd found the one place he couldn't watch, her heart, and she'd locked him out. The laptop screen glowed in the darkening room. The cameras kept recording. The mansion sat empty. And somewhere in Lagos, his wife was making decisions that would change everything. Obinna had spent 5 years watching her. Now he couldn't find her at all. The surveillance feeds showed nothing but empty rooms and the ghost of a marriage that had died long before anyone noticed. His phone lit up one final time. A message from an unknown number. "The cameras can't save you from what you've already lost." Why? The truth hit him like a physical blow. He hadn't lost control. He'd never had it in the first place. 3 weeks later, Obinna sat in the same study where this nightmare had begun, staring at blank screens. He'd turned off the cameras. All of them. The decision had come on day 7 of Yetunde's absence. He'd been watching the feeds obsessively, waiting for her to return. When he realized something that made him physically ill, he was still trying to control a situation that was completely beyond his control. So he'd called the security company, had them deactivate everything except the perimeter cameras. The ones inside the house, in the bedrooms, living rooms, hallways, went dark for the first time in 5 years. The silence was deafening. Without the cameras, the house felt different, larger, emptier, like a museum of a life that used to exist. He walked through rooms he'd only ever seen through screens and realized how little he actually knew about his own home. There were books on Yetunde's nightstand he'd never noticed, photographs on the wall he'd never really looked at, a garden she'd cultivated that he'd only ever seen from overhead angles. He'd been living in a house he'd never truly inhabited. On day 10, Yetunde's lawyer called again. "My client would like to meet with you tomorrow, 2 p.m., at her mother's house in Ibadan. She asks that you come alone." "I'll be there," he said immediately. "Mr. Nnamdi, I should inform you my client has prepared divorce papers. Whether or not she files them depends on this conversation. I'd advise you to think carefully about what you want to say." Divorce papers. The word sat in his chest like a stone. 23 years of marriage, reduced to legal documents. A union that had survived poverty, struggle, and the climb to wealth, about to be dissolved because he'd confused surveillance with love. He didn't sleep that night. Instead, he did something he hadn't done in years. He prayed. Not the performative prayers he recited at business events or society weddings. Real prayer. Desperate, broken, honest prayer. "God, I don't even know if you're listening to me anymore. I've been so focused on building an empire that I forgot to build a home. I've been so obsessed with control that I destroyed the one thing that was real. If you give me another chance, just one more chance, I'll do better. I swear I'll do better." The next day, he drove to Ibadan alone. No driver, no security detail. Just him and the 3-hour journey with his thoughts. Yetunde's family home was a modest bungalow in a quiet neighborhood. Nothing like the mansion in Ikoyi. But as he pulled up, he felt something he hadn't expected. Nostalgia. He'd come here 23 years ago to ask for Yetunde's hand in marriage. Had sat in that same living room, nervous and hopeful, promising her father he'd take care of her. What a spectacular failure he'd been at keeping that promise. Her mother answered the door. Mrs. Adelake. She'd aged since he'd last seen her. More gray in her hair, more lines around her eyes. She looked at him with an expression that wasn't quite hostility, but wasn't warmth either. "Obinna." "Ma." He bowed slightly. "Thank you for allowing me to come." "I didn't allow it. My daughter did, and only because she believes every man deserves a chance to speak his truth." She stepped aside. "She's in the backyard." He found Yetunde sitting under the same mango tree where he'd proposed to her decades ago. She wore a simple Ankara dress, blue and white, and her hair was wrapped in a matching headscarf. No makeup, no jewelry, just herself. She looked up as he approached, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. "Yetunde," he finally said, his voice rough. "Obinna." She gestured to the empty chair across from her. "Sit." He sat. The silence stretched between them like an ocean. "I turned off the cameras," he blurted out. "All of them. I should have done it years ago. I should never have installed them in the first place. I know you turned them off," she interrupted gently. "I could feel it. The house breathes differently now." "You could feel it?" "You can always feel when someone stops watching you, Obinna. It's like a pressure being lifted." She folded her hands in her lap. "Why did you do it? The cameras. Why?" He'd prepared a dozen answers on the drive, excuses, justifications, but sitting there under that mango tree, looking into the eyes of the woman who'd loved him when he was nobody, all the lies dissolved. "Because I was afraid," he said simply. "I was afraid that if I didn't watch you, you'd leave, or betray me, or prove that I wasn't enough. The cameras made me feel safe, in control, like nothing could surprise me." "And did they? Make you feel safe?" "No." His voice cracked. "They made me feel more afraid, because no matter how much I watched, I couldn't see what I was looking for." "And what were you looking for?" "Proof that you still loved me. Proof that I still mattered to you." Yetunde's expression softened. "Obinna, I never stopped loving you. But love without respect is torture. Love without trust is a prison. You turned our marriage into a surveillance operation, and I became your suspect instead of your partner." "I know. God, I know." He leaned forward, desperate. "But I can change. I've already started. No more cameras. No more lies. I'll end things with—" He stopped. "With Ngozi?" Yetunde supplied calmly. "Yes, I know about her. I've known for almost 2 years." His head snapped up. 2 years? Why didn't you say anything?" "Because I was trying to figure out if I still wanted to fight for a marriage where my husband was fighting for someone else." She paused. "And I realized something important. I can't compete for my own husband's attention. I shouldn't have to. Either he chooses me, or he doesn't. Either he sees my worth, or he's blind. But I won't beg, and I won't perform. Not anymore. You never had to compete, Yetunde. Ngozi was nothing. She meant nothing. Then why did you give her 2 years of your life? Why did you give her the attention, the time, the affection you withheld from me. Her voice remained steady, but tears gathered in her eyes. Do you know what it's like to watch your husband leave your bed to text another woman? To cook his favorite meals and have him say he's already eaten with her? To celebrate your anniversary alone while he's in some hotel pretending you don't exist? Yetunde, I was dying, Obinna. Slowly, quietly. Dying of loneliness in a mansion full of cameras but empty of love. And you were so busy watching me that you never saw it. The tears he'd been holding back for weeks finally broke free. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I don't know how to fix this, but I want to try. Please, just tell me what to do. She wiped her own eyes and took a deep breath. I don't know if you can fix this, Obinna. Some things, once broken, can't be repaired. They can only be mourned and released. So that's it? 23 years and you're just done? I didn't say I was done. I said I don't know. She reached into her bag and pulled out an envelope. The divorce papers. I had these drawn up because I needed to know I had options, that I wasn't trapped. But whether or not I file them isn't the question. Then what is? The question is, can you become the man I fell in love with? Not the billionaire, not the powerful businessman. The man who used to hold my hand under this tree and talk about building a life together. The man who saw me, really saw me. Can that man come back? Or is he gone forever? Obinna looked at her, truly looked at her, maybe for the first time in years. He saw the gray strands in her hair she no longer bothered to dye, the lines around her eyes from years of smiling through pain. The strength in her posture that came from surviving what should have broken her. She was beautiful. Not in the flashy, attention-grabbing way Ngozi was beautiful, but in the deep, enduring way of women who've weathered storms and emerged with their dignity intact. How had he been so blind? I don't know if he can come back, Obinna admitted. But I want to try. I want to learn how to love you the way you deserve. Without cameras, without control. Just us, the way we used to be. Yetunde was quiet for a long moment. Then she tucked the envelope back into her bag. I'm not coming home yet, she said. I need more time. Time to heal. Time to see if your words match your actions. Time to figure out who I am outside of being Mrs. Nnamdi. How long? As long as it takes. She stood, and he stood with her. But Obinna, hear me clearly. If you contact that woman again, if you lie to me again, if you ever put cameras in our home again, I will walk away and never look back. This is your only chance. Don't waste it. I won't. I swear I won't. She nodded slowly, then did something unexpected. She reached out and touched his face, the first physical contact they'd had in weeks. Her hand was gentle, familiar, and it nearly broke him. I loved you when you had nothing, she whispered. I can love you again if you remember how to be lovable. But I won't love a stranger wearing my husband's face. So figure out who you are, Obinna, and then maybe we can figure out who we are. She walked away, back toward the house, leaving him standing under the mango tree, alone. But somehow, for the first time in years, not lonely. 6 months later, Obinna stood in his study, the same room where he'd spent countless hours watching screens, and looked at the empty wall where the monitors used to hang. He'd replaced them with photographs, real ones. Him and Yetunde on their wedding day, their families gathered at Christmas, moments captured not by hidden cameras but by people who loved them. Yetunde had come home 3 months ago, not with fanfare or dramatic declarations. She'd simply arrived one evening with her bags and said, I'm willing to try. It hadn't been easy. They'd started marriage counseling, something he'd initially resisted but now valued. They talked, really talked, about the hurt, the betrayal, the cameras, Ngozi, everything he'd buried under surveillance and control. Ngozi had tried to make good on her threats, spreading rumors in social circles. But without Obinna's attention or money, she'd quickly faded into irrelevance. He'd learned an important lesson. People who love you for your power disappear when the power shifts. The cameras remained off. Sometimes he felt the urge to turn them back on, to check, to verify, to control. But he resisted. Trust, his therapist said, was a muscle you had to exercise even when it hurt. Yetunde was in the garden now. He could see her through the window, tending to her flowers. He didn't need a camera to know where she was or what she was doing. He could simply walk outside and join her. So he did. "Hi," he said, approaching carefully. She looked up and smiled, a real smile. "Hi. Need help?" "Always." He knelt beside her in the dirt, this billionaire in his expensive agbada, and helped his wife plant roses. They worked in comfortable silence, the kind that comes not from having nothing to say, but from knowing you don't have to perform. "Obinna?" she said after a while. "Yes." "Thank you." "For what?" "For choosing me. Finally." He took her hand, dirt and all. "I should have chosen you every day for the past 23 years. I'm sorry it took losing you to learn how." She squeezed his hand. "We're still learning. Both of us." "Yeah," he agreed. "We are." That night, as they lay in bed, together, really together for the first time in years, Obinna thought about the cameras, about how desperately he'd clung to them, about how certain he'd been that surveillance equaled security. He'd been so wrong. The cameras had shown him everything except what mattered, that love cannot be monitored, trust cannot be verified through lenses, and the only way to truly know someone is to be brave enough to be known yourself. In the old African folk tales his grandmother used to tell, there was always a moral, a lesson wrapped in story. If Obinna's life were a folk tale, the lesson would be simple. The man who watches everything sees nothing. The husband who controls his wife loses her. And power without trust is just a prison where you're both the guard and the inmate. He'd built an empire with cameras and lost a kingdom without them. But perhaps, just perhaps, he could build something better with his bare hands and an open heart. The screens were dark now, the surveillance system dismantled, and for the first time in 5 years, Obinna Nnamdi could finally see clearly, not through cameras, through the eyes of a man learning, painfully and humbly, to love without conditions and trust without proof. It wasn't control, but it was real. And real, he was discovering, was infinitely more valuable than power ever was. The end. If control cost you your marriage, would you still call it power? Think about that. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I want to hear what this story taught you. Don't forget to like this video. Subscribe to Voice of Aunty Dora for more powerful African stories. And hit that notification bell so you never miss our next tale. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Until next time, remember, the strongest love is built on trust, not surveillance. God bless you all.